Hey everyone, and welcome to WDIM Plus, where today I will be breaking down the first season of the Hulu series Modoc, based around the Marvel comic book villain of the same name. After initially being greenlit as a series in February of 2019, Modoc had to wait almost a year to begin production due to the Disney purchase of Marvel Studios. Before moving under the Disney banner, Modoc was planned to be part of a new group of series based around lower-level Marvel characters that would eventually team up in a new series called The Offenders. This idea was scrapped apparently after the merger, with only M.O.D.O.K and the yet-to-be-aired series Hitmonkey surviving, but now both are standalone series with no plans to cross over. This show was created by Jordan Blum, who in the past has written and produced episodes of Community and American Dad, as well as being created by the main voice actor of the show, Patton Oswalt, who the series seems to be tailor-made for. Here, I will go over the characters that show up throughout the first season of the series, as well as the main villains and the cliffhanger ending. If this is your first time here, my name is Eric, and if you do enjoy this video, you can do a lot to help support a small channel like this by hitting that like button. The character Modoc was first seen during the Silver Age of comic books in the Tales of Suspense comics of 1967, and for most of his early run was usually a foe of Captain America. Unlike most of Steve Rogers' enemies, who were based around some form of political ideology, Modoc was one that is a bit more sympathetic given his origins. Before he was Modoc, he was a scientist working for AIM named George Charlton, who gets experimented on without his knowledge using a device known as the Cosmic Cube, better known in the MCU as the Tesseract. AIM planned on increasing George's intellect so that he could be a living computer, and in fact the first acronym he used as a name ended with a C instead of a K and stood for Mental Organism, designed only for computing. These experiments deform George to a point where his head is so large that he needs a chair to move around that he designs. The chair has many adaptable weapons as well and can fly, while also giving him a form of armor. The problem with creating someone that is super smart by tricking them is that the person gets smart enough to figure out that you tricked them, and that is what George eventually does. When he learns that AIM secretly experimented on him, he kills the company's leadership and takes over for himself. The series is obviously a much more farcical take on the character, as we never do see him before he changes into Modoc, as he has already taken this form by the time he is in college. But if you do want to see this play out, I suggest playing the Marvel Avengers game, as Modoc is the main villain there and most of his story plays out as it does in the comics. On the series, Modoc is married to a woman named Jody, who is voiced by actress Amy Garcia, who you may remember from the George Lopez show, as well as the Showtime series Dexter. He also has two children, one who resembles Modoc, or the female version from the comics, Madame, who is named Melissa and voiced by actress Melissa Fumero from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. The other is a seemingly normal child who eventually gains an android copy of himself, who are both named Lou and voiced by Ben Schwartz, who besides playing John Ralphio on Parks and Rec, has voiced many animated characters. In fact, Lou's sweater is blue on the series because of some of the characters Ben Schwartz has voiced in the past, such as Leo from The Rise of the Ninja Turtles, Dewey from DuckTales, and Sonic the Hedgehog. I expected to not enjoy the family scenes as much, and honestly, I thought they were some of the best parts of the first season. Each character is very unique, and their relationship with Modoc, along with their own personality quirks, creates a similar dynamic to the Griffins on Family Guy. Speaking of Family Guy, if you thought that Modoc reminded you of the show Robot Chicken, that's because the stop-motion animation was done by Stupid Buddy Studios, a studio created by Seth Green, who voices characters on Family Guy and created Robot Chicken. I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy the stop-motion style of the series, but much like the movie Team America, which used puppets for characters, I thought the stop-motion style probably enhanced some of the silliness of the show. If you think back on the season, there are some pretty violent moments, like people being ripped in two and children's heads being sawed off. But using this style of animation kind of lessens the blow of these types of moments and allows them to be shocking without changing the tone of the show into something darker. Everything in the show is very tongue-in-cheek, and even the heroes we know, like Iron Man, who is voiced by John Hamm and who can't seem to concentrate on one thing at a time, are exaggerations of the versions that we have seen. All of the characters are done well, and trying to figure out the faces behind them is one of the funnest parts of watching shows like this. Besides the main family, Modoc spends most of his time at AIM working under Austin, who is voiced by Saturday Night Live actor Beck Bennett, who also voices a character on the DuckTales like Ben Schwartz does. After his company Grumble purchases AIM, this is shown to actually be a plot by something called Hexis, the Living Corporation. Hexis is a villain that showed up once in Marvel Comics history and is shown in very much the same light in the comics as in the series, as it is a living parasite bent on taking over the Earth and depleting it of its resources. I love that the show can use these little-known characters from Marvel's history for the series, and I'm sure a lifelong comic book fan like Patton Oswalt knows tons of characters to use. Apparently, the only characters the show tried to use in the first season and could not because of contract obligations to other companies were the characters Stiltman, Paste Pot Pete, and Turner D. Century. Other C&D level members of the Marvel community that show up are Pound Cakes, who is voiced by Whoopi Goldberg and is also a villain of Captain America. In the comics, she gains her super strength from a character known as the Power Broker, who just made her live-action debut in the series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but in this series it seems that they made her powers a mutant ability. We also meet the character Armadillo, another Captain America foe who was given his powers of super strength and durability after his genes were crossed with an armadillo by Dr. Carl Manus, another character tied to the Power Broker. There's also the Melter, a character that actually debuted in the comics before M.O.D.O.K and is a villain of Iron Man that is an expert on melting things like metal, iron, and cheese, evidently. Also, there's a very obscure villain Tenpin, who is voiced by rapper and former SNL actor Chris Parnell, who is actually a villain of Hawkeye and was part of a group of theme villains from the 80s known as the Death Throes. Rounding out the group of misfit villains that help M.O.D.O.K is Angar the Screamer, who is voiced by another SNL alum, Bill Hader, and can scream to a point that will cause hallucinations in others. This is one of two characters Hader voices, as he also voices the green-skinned leader in the Soho bar scene, using the same voice he uses to impersonate Vincent Price. At the Soho bar, we also meet Mr. Sinister with the leader, who is not part of the Marvel Live universe, but was cast in the movie New Mutants to be played by John Hamm, who voices Iron Man in this series, but his scenes in the movie New Mutants were not released due to the X-Men franchise also being taken over by Disney. Another C-list Marvel villain that shows up is Arcade, who is voiced by Alan Tudyk, an actor with an extensive live action and voice acting career, whose character is a Spider-Man villain created in the 70s, who I always thought seemed more like a Batman villain due to his need to play themed games. Most of the series deals with Modok going through a divorce from his family and his company, and him trying to get them both back, and learning about why both are important to him along the way. For a silly series, I thought it did touch on some meaningful subjects, while also being entertaining, even if it is hard to look at Modok and take him seriously, which turns out to be part of the charm of the show. Although he is not able to win his family back by the end of the series, he is able to trick AIM and Hexis by having Tony Stark buy all of his shares along with those of his former rival turned partner, Monica Rappaccini, who is voiced by Wendy McClendon-Covey. Tony Stark fires both of them and stops AIM from all its evil work, and Modok and Monica create a new version of AIM where they are now partners. Now, just last month, it was announced that the show is working on a second season, but I think that it was greenlit long before that, because I really think that the 10th and final episode of the first season was created with a second season in mind. Because the first 9 episodes seem to wrap up everything pretty nicely, and then we get to the last episode, in which an out-of-time Modok reveals that the only future in which Modok takes over the world is one in which he allows his family to die. This is pretty shocking to me, not only because his family was my favorite part of the series, but even Modok seems to choose his family over his plans before he allows his other self, who calls himself the Anomaly, to kill them. This creates the utopia that Modok desired, but we also see that he has been torturing the Anomaly until his eventual death in an effort to save his family and keep this future. The first season ends with Modok promising to do just that, as we see that he has created an Iron Throne from the remnants of the Iron Man armor. Now, looking to next season, I'm guessing that there will be an overarching story of Modok trying to rescue his family, but since he will not want to mess with the timeline now that he rules the world, I believe we will see Modok travel through the multiverse. The first season already had a good amount of time travel, and the Anomaly version of Modok is literally from a different dimension created by the events of the first season. This would allow for the show to not only show more Marvel characters, but different versions of them, like the What If animated series that is set to air on Disney Plus later in 2021. But you let me know in the comments, what do you think of this first season, and where can you see the show going next season? Thank you for clicking on this video. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you have not yet, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?